The upcoming survival MMO Dune Awakening is going to have a big emphasis on what they're calling combined arms. Now this basically just means that the combat of the game can take part in multiple different avenues, whether it be on the ground just with your character, your abilities, and your weapons, whether it be on the ground in the different vehicles, going from things like a trike, which is basically just a small motorcycle, all the way up to big tanks that can have different weaponry on them. And the final axis is in the air, so being in a flying vehicle that can have different weapons attached to it. That's the general basis of the combined arms system, and one of the main elements of this system is going to be vehicles. Dune Awakening is going to have a very interesting and potentially intricate vehicle system, which includes multiple different elements. So that's what I want to go over in this video. All of the vehicles we know of and go over their different systems. And the vehicles in Dune Awakening aren't just going to play a combat role, but they're also going to play a very big role in just general travel. The game is going to be very big, so just having something that allows you to speed up your movement is going to be good at a baseline. But then you have things like the Ornithopter, which is the main flying vehicle we've seen so far, and that Ornithopter is going to be the requirement to leave the first spot you start in Dune Awakening, which is Fabrication. You need to create your first flying vehicle, which will be an Ornithopter, to start to fly to the different hub areas or fly to the deep desert. So they're all going to play a big role in combat, they're all going to play a big role in traversal, and you're going to have some pretty interesting control over customizing these different vehicles with their module system. And the good news is we actually have a small explanation of this module system from Dune Awakening officially, because they posted on Twitter that Arrakis is vast and vehicles will be your best friend when traveling around. With vehicle modules, you can customize your ground cars and ornithopters to fit any mission when you set out to explore Arrakis. Whether it's extra storage, speed boost, resource scanners, or firepower, your vehicle can be adapted to your needs as you travel. And with this post, it seems that every vehicle we currently know of will have the module system that you can customize, because we really only know about the ornithopters and ground vehicles, which they're just calling ground cars here. So it seems like every vehicle is going to be able to be pretty heavily customized depending on what you're trying to do. And in a survival sandbox like Dune Awakening, all of these things are actually going to be very important. Being able to put extra storage on something is going to be incredibly important for gathering resources, for bringing back resources from, say, a PvP fight or a raid, just making it much easier to actually transport those resources. If you compare this to, say, something like Ark Survival Evolved, which instead of everything being vehicles, it's just dinosaurs, but they still have the kind of combined arms combat, it's pretty common in Ark where you'll get a flying dino or a tankier ground dino that can store a lot of items, and bringing those to raids or harvesting with them, you can get speed boosts, which is just going to be good for movement, potentially also being really good for combat. Being able to have a vehicle where you could put firepower on it, then put on some like speed boost could be really good. Resource scanners is going to be incredibly important, especially when you're playing with bigger guilds or even smaller, more tight-knit groups. Having someone with a resource scanning vehicle could be incredibly strong to find more rare resources, especially with the deep desert changing every week. That's going to be incredibly strong. And then the last one obviously being firepower. We've seen tons of different things that this could potentially be. We've seen one of the ground vehicles, which is seeming to be more of a transport vehicle, but it looks like they put a turret on it, potentially a turret that requires someone be on it to use it. We've seen ornithopters with rocket pods on them. We've seen the kind of tank vehicle with a flamethrower on it. We've also potentially seen it with like a normal tank cannon. So there's going to be tons of firepower differences that'll probably be good for countering different things as well. Now, we've only seen a handful of vehicles. We don't know if there's going to be more on launch, but presumably there's going to be more added in future updates, as Dune Awakening is going to be a live service game. So going down the list, we have the trikes, which are basically just the motorcycles. I think you can have up to 2 people on this. Not sure if there's going to be a module to allow you to have more seats on this, but this is basically just a small ground vehicle to transport yourself somewhere very quickly. We haven't seen if there's going to be like any armor packages or weaponry you can put on this. Presumably this is just going to be for movement with a small amount of players. We've seen the quad ground cars, which seem to be more of a troop transport. We've seen its doors open and there's a few rows of seats in it. It has these 4 different separate treads on it, so it kind of has tank treads but split up between 4 different kind of wheels. And we have also seen turrets placed on this. We've also seen what seems to be a handful of other modules. In one of the art or concept art for the game, it looks like they had something on this that kind of looks like it has a cable on it. So maybe that's for like towing another vehicle, or maybe that's for like shooting a cable somewhere up high. So maybe you could bring this up to like a ledge, shoot a cable up high, and then have people use that cable to go up, or maybe it's used for something else. But this definitely seems like a vehicle that will have a lot of different options for it, just because it can transport a lot of people, and there may be a bunch of other utility options for it. Probably not tons of weaponry. It's probably not going to be focused on that, but probably a pretty modular vehicle in general. But then we have what seems to be the biggest and most powerful vehicle we've seen for the ground, which are tanks. And this looks to just be Dune's version of a tank. It has a handful of these really large treads. It's much bigger than the other vehicles. It looks to be much more armored. And we've seen a few different things on it. We don't know the exact weaponry, but the best screenshots we've gotten of it has been with a character on it using a flamethrower on the top. But I don't think we've really seen it used with like what you would expect from a normal main battle tank. We don't know if that's going to be other modules. We don't know if you'll be able to trade out the flamethrower for like a machine gun or something. Most likely you'd be able to do that. This is probably going to be like your main battle vehicle, and I would expect there to probably be a lot of like armor packages or different weaponry you can put on this thing. And then finally, for the only flying vehicle we've seen, we have the Ornithopter, which is the most famous Dune vehicle. It's basically their version of a helicopter, but it does seem to move quite a bit faster. And in Dune Awakening, it's going to play a bunch of really big roles, like we mentioned, especially with it being the only flying vehicle. It's going to be used for basically everything, but you're going to need it to start to travel to the different areas of the game. It's probably going to be the fastest movement just because you can fly over everything. These things seem pretty fast. You'll probably have a lot of different packages to add to it to make it faster, to make it potentially more armored, make it be able to carry more things, and definitely add more weaponry to it. We've definitely seen multiple different Ornithopters with these missile pads added to it that allow you to send out barrages of missiles. I would fully expect there to be maybe things like machine guns or miniguns added to it, and potentially a handful of other weaponry. This is probably going to be the main most sought after vehicle, because it also seems that the Ornithopter mixed with the module system is also going to take the place of the carry-all in Dune. Now, if you've seen any other Dune media, like any of the different Dune movies, they always have some vehicle that's basically a carry-all, which is what's mainly used to pick up other vehicles and carry them. In the newest Dune movies, they seem kind of like hot air balloons, where they go over and they pick up a vehicle and then they pop out their balloons, and that's how they fly things around. One of the big scenes in the first Dune movie was these carry-alls failing while carrying one of the big spice harvesters. But it seems like at Dune Awakening, at least on launch, the Ornithopter is going to play the role of being able to carry the other ground vehicles. Now, what we've seen of this is it looks like you're basically putting together 2 Ornithopters into one vehicle to change it into a different version of an Ornithopter to be able to carry things. It legitimately looks like 2 bodies of Ornithopters connected and change into this vehicle that's primarily focused on carrying things. It looks like it has a big bay on the bottom that opens up, so it may also be good for like troop transport or something like that. And it's going to be very important for carrying the different ground vehicles and also carrying the big spice harvesters. Now, we don't know much about the spice harvesters. We know they're very prominent in the Dune universe in general. These are very important for harvesting all that spice. We don't know if the spice harvesters are going to be these really big vehicles you can drive normally. We don't know if they're going to be even pilotable by players. Like maybe this is just going to be some piece of technology that you pick up, bring to a spice area, and it starts to auto harvest things. We don't exactly know, but it seems the Ornithopter is going to be carrying those around. And as I mentioned, all these vehicles seem to also be able to take part in the module system, which is a very interesting system because it seems they're taking the building system's blueprinting elements where you can put down any blueprint of any building piece without using any resources, and you can move it around freely, and then you can place things into it to build that actual piece. It seems like they're kind of doing that with vehicles. It seems like you'll use some type of fabrication station to make a vehicle or make parts of a vehicle, then you'll place it down like a building building, and you'll keep connecting different pieces to it. And then on top of that, you also craft any modules you want to put on the vehicle, and then take that part and put it onto the vehicle physically as well. So it's almost like you're building a small base that just ends up being one of these vehicles. It's a really cool way to do the system. It makes the vehicle super modular and super customizable, so you can really customize all of the different elements you put on the vehicle to the way you like to use it, or to what you're specifically using that vehicle for. So I think the module and vehicle systems are going to be really cool and really interesting in Dune Awakening, and they kind of have to be, because vehicles are going to play a very big role in basically every element of the game, especially once you get into like late game PvP. It's going to be constant vehicle versus vehicle fights, and on top of that, just transport in those fights, just being able to carry resources back effectively. All of that is going to play a very massive role in the entirety of this MMO. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.